Welcome to Digital Currents, brought to you by Morgan Creek Digital. I'm Xavier Segura. Each episode, we spotlight the topics and people changing the tech industry with a focus on AI, blockchain, chips, and big data. Thanks for listening, and please make sure to subscribe if you like what you hear. And remember, stay current.
Hey, Mark, we have been recording on a different day here this week, but different story too. It's a little bit of a comeback. How are you doing?
Everything's good. Everything's good. And yeah, we are, mixing things up a little bit. It seems like we were just together. I was on the road trip, which turned out really well for us Irish fans down in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So recording on Wednesday this week, the first day of Uptober, which we'll talk about. And because of that, I'm wearing pink. I always wear pink on Wednesdays for brain tumor awareness. And I don't have any green or orange pants, but I do have some sock game. So I have the Bitcoin moon, with the rocket ships. And those are probably better for Moonvember, so a month from now, but they'll work for Uptober. And
love the names.
It's amazing to me, X. It's funny. We did our Fund One, so Morgan Creek Blockchain Opportunities Fund One quarterly call earlier today, and it was just interesting that our cost in BTC for Fund One, which is a 2018 vintage, is just over $5,000. The price of Bitcoin moved more than $5,000 in the last 24 hours. As we went up from we had the little flush at the end of September with options expiration. So we'll see, but it looks good so far.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me, Mark, of when we started reporting Bitcoin going into six figures, and then it was, in increments of a million. So it was, 0.1 million. And that just kind of shows how, the time in market beats timing the market. But we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the current time of the market where, things now are kind of headed towards this. I don't want to be ominous, Mark, and say reckoning, because reckoning implies that there has to be some sort of judgment or a mea culpa, if you will, on non-believers, not to get too biblical. But I'll say that ultimately the end of the year is a point where people are kind of thinking about what that means for BTC cycles and what that could mean for, the rest of the market. Obviously, alts have been on fire. Bitcoin is still up 20% on the year relative to for S&P, of which it always gets compared to for, these large asset backers that have now jumped into the asset class. I think that we well established, Mark, this floor of 100,000, right? And I remember earlier in this show in the year that it was, well, if we could just get to 100,000, there was like a saran wrap on that number, and we were in the 90s, and now it's the other way.
100 a day till 100K, X, right? I was with Breedlove doing my 100 push-ups a day till 100K, which is kind of cool because I've kept up the habit. I still do 100 push-ups every day just for that. But what's this idea of six-figure Bitcoin 2 years ago, right? When it was 15,000 was anathema. Oh, that could never happen.
Ludicrous.
And to your point, we've been above 100K for, it was dead. It was dead. It's going to zero. But we've been above 100K for 132 days in a row now, longest streak ever. We just printed our highest closing monthly candle. You know how a candle works. So you start and then you go up and you go down. It forms that candlestick. And then wherever, you have the open, high, low, close. Well, the close of the candle, the top, is the highest ever. Now, yes, we've had higher intra-month periods. We hit 124, and we're only 116 yesterday. But here we are, and I think when you put all of this together, on top of the S curve of adoption, right? We're kind of like 1998 internet. It's about 11% adoption. The sad stat someone shared with me yesterday, and I shouldn't make. I'm not making fun, but I do think it's a sad state of affairs that there are more people with OnlyFans accounts than Bitcoin wallets. And
what does that say about our society?
I know, and look,
to each his own, right? But still,
I don't know. It is what it is, but I do think it's a sad commentary. And so, but it also says how early we are to the adoption cycle. And look, we have, it seems about every day. No, that's not true. About every week we get a big announcement from Washington, D.C. about some new initiative. Today it was, hey, they're not going to tax capital gains on the Bitcoin treasury companies like MicroStrategy. I mean, that is monster news. I mean, it's just, here's a crazy stat, X. For every $1,700 move in Bitcoin, okay, so $1,700 move in Bitcoin, Strategy makes $1 billion.
That's unbelievable. And I think it's worth unpacking, Mark, because the idea of taxation was at the core of some of the initial sets of policies post inauguration. The idea of trying to onshore things back into the U.S. And there was some malignment for some naysayers of crypto, that people invest in crypto to sort of dodge Uncle Sam. So we can't have our cake and eat it too here in the worlds of not your keys, not your cheese, because I think this is a very deliberate consolidation effort, which listen, there are pros and cons here. But I think on the one side, what we always say, Mark, is that tax evasion bad, tax diminution or reduction is good.
I mean, taxing unrealized gains has always been a stupid idea. From day one, that's a stupid idea. And I don't care if you're doing it at the corporate level, the individual level, nation state level. There's nothing good about the idea of taxing unrealized gains. I will argue that taxing gains at all is silly, right? You want to encourage capital formation and wealth creation. So I would argue if you want to invest your capital, you shouldn't pay capital gains tax. But whatever. I actually wouldn't tax income either, right? I would tax consumption, right? You should want to encourage the most income, not people hiding their income or doing fancy tax avoidance schemes to lower their income, like investing in money losing businesses. I'm like, hold on. You want me to put real money into something that loses money so I pay less tax on my actual money? No, just don't tax me on my income. But when I want to buy a big fancy boat, not me, but if some billionaire wants to buy some big fancy boat, they should pay a lot of tax. Or, you want to use a lot of jet fuel in your private plane, pay a lot of tax. But, for the average person who needs to buy food, you can have lower tax. It can be purely progressive instead of regressive. And there'd be no diminution of tax revenues. And we'd actually capture the entire $2 trillion-ish black market. Right now, there are a lot of people doing untoward things, running drugs, smuggling arms, whatever. They pay no taxes. If when they went to buy the fancy car or big house or whatever, you charge them taxes, so be it. They should still get in trouble for doing illegal stuff, but you got to catch them
Absolutely.
doing it and punish them. But buying a house is good for the economy, and buying a car is good for the economy. So let's take the tax there. But anyway, we digress. Let's go back to where we are in the cycle, why we're excited about the cycle, and maybe you've been doing a lot of work in payments lately. Just got back from a demo day in the Middle East, and some payment companies presented there. And we got payment companies in LATAM, and we got remittances, and talk maybe about what's happening there and how that ties into stable coins and all that.
No, it's a good topic, Mark. And to recap, we didn't mention it on the last show, but out in Dubai, the actual model that you're describing, kind of the consumption-based economy that kind of helps clear some of the demands on social services, is up and running, right? I don't live in the Middle East, but I feel like with every trip, you get a little bit more information, right? And you kind of try to stitch that together to form an opinion or an hypothesis. So as it relates to payments, the reason that some of these hubs, whether they're in LATAM or whether they are in the Middle East, Mark, it's about trying to have these borderless 24/7 transactions. And I think what is very axiomatic is that on the one hand, you have this asset that is trading 24/7, which is the underlying stablecoin or crypto. But to onboard those customers, that is very much a local push. And that is very much a push that has to be done in concert, as best done in concert with a local financial regulatory entity. And I think that's really the piece where, as investors, we have seen this shift, where if you can kind of scale up a business to somewhere in the low tens of millions of dollars, you are a very prime acquisition target for somewhere in the 100 to 500 million range. We've seen this happen a ton of times with the Bridge acquisition or the various ones that MoonPay has done. But this is really this idea of bringing on new customers to have a direct shot across the bow at big banks, at the bulge market banks, because this is really an idea of reducing the fees. And it reminds me of this story, Mark, and I'm going to call hogwash on this, to quote my old history professor, Craig Thurtell of AP history. It was hogwash that SWIFT partners with global banks on blockchain ledgers for instant payments. So SWIFT, as we know, is the legacy system that takes a ton of time and kind of uses this slippage to incentivize some bad behavior from banks, taking away your money in transactions that we do every single day. So their aim is to partner with, let's say, the usual suspects, the JPs, the HSBCs, the Deutsche Banks, BNP Paribas. So all of the major, let's call it G7, G8 banking institutions that will build on their network, collecting 11,000 banks. Why are they doing this now, Mark? Because they know that the end is near or inevitable, right? I love your quote that you always say is that, at first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And we are thoroughly in the fighting phase. With the investments that we're making, you see a lot of traction that are getting done. For example, in the Middle East, what are we doing there? We found a company that is based in Dubai and exporting technology outside of the region to try to kind of attract the best talent that they can and grow this business. And predominantly in sub-Saharan Africa, where you have this kind of disparate banking system where you have a extremely underbanked population that is very cash elastic, right? Where they need to be able to transact, but those dollars can be kind of scarce, but they are somewhat still connected by kind of technology that can be brought on chain. So our company Zebra has partnered with the telecoms and saying, hey, if you have a cell phone, you now have a bank account and a wallet, and you can connect and send money via Web3. So we think this is a great model, and this is done at a local level. So JP Morgan can't go out into these markets and sign up customers. It's going to cost them a ton of money. I mean, Mark, how much does JP Morgan's advertising campaigns during college football? We see this all the time. It's astronomical, but the startups that we're finding, and we're basing this on a kind of first check into these early stage companies where we can help grow the business. We can sit on the board. We can help them develop the product a little bit. And the goal is, once they get to a certain stage, we can start bringing in other leaders, whether they're from the capital side or whether they're from the partnership side, like we're doing in the Middle East. And really, once they kind of get to that sweet spot of, the tens of millions in revenue, they've got some decisions to make. Can they survive in that next scale of, let's say, controlling their own destiny? We've seen some kind of look to be, of a certain size. But by and large, I think these are land grab strategies, and companies like Circle are recognizing that, their domain is the U.S., but the U.S. is not the leader in stablecoins. It's definitely the rest of world. And so when we've made our
to that point, the U.S. is not the leader in anything digital. I mean, we want to be, and current administration is trying to speak it into being, but the reality is, American exceptionalism, it's great, right? We're optimistic, manifest destiny, all that good stuff. That's all fine. But the reality is the vast majority of digital transactions occur outside U.S. borders.
Right.
I'll give you an example, right? The volatility in Bitcoin over the past month or so, not driven by Coinbase, not driven by the New York Stock Exchange, not driven by the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, driven by Binance. Binance, if you take the transaction volume on Binance and you add up every other exchange in the world, right? Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, all of them, all the DEXs, all the SEXs, CEX, not SEX.
Family show.
You put them all, a family show. You put them all together, they're not as big as Binance. So Binance can liquidate the leverage longs, which they did going into options expiration.
Yep.
They can squeeze the shorts as they did last night, right? People were short into month end. They squeezed the heck out of them overnight, and boom, we're up $9,000 in 24 hours. And you can't think about that. $9,000. I mean, 6 years ago, we weren't $9,000 in the price. So it's incredible. And that globalization is so profound because, to your point, 40% of the people in the world don't have a bank account. Just let that number hang in the air for a second. I mean, we're talking billions with an S of people don't have a bank account. And so, but 70% of those do have a mobile phone, and they can be empowered through digital assets and digital technology to transact. And, it all started in Nairobi, Kenya with M-Pesa and using cell phone minutes, literally as a barter system, like a digital currency. And, we've all heard about, the mana in video games and how that inspired people to realize that this, leisure. And then, our president on Truth Social last night of this guy explaining what Bitcoin is. Man, that's pretty extraordinary, right? I mean, you don't see a lot of world leaders tweeting about Bitcoin, but the guy, what he basically explained is it's just a piece of software that allows you to send value directly to anyone in the world at any time with no intermediary taking a cut. That's it. I mean, that sounds pretty good, actually, right? I mean, I can actually own stuff. I mean, that's one of the fallacies of banking, right? It's not money. Right? It's currency, right? Money is gold, and gold isn't in the bank. It's in the central banks. So you have debt, you have currency, and it's not yours because you gave it to the bank and you have an IOU, and it's not in the bank because they've rehypothecated it and lent it out 9 times, for their reserve requirement of 11%. And so it's not money, it's not yours, and it's not in the bank. So why do we have this great faith in this system, whereas my Bitcoin that I have is mine and no one can claim it because the consensus mechanism says, the ledger says it's mine. And if I tap a few buttons and send it to you, I don't need JP Morgan. I don't need Citigroup. I don't need M-Pesa. I don't need anybody. I can send it to you and it becomes yours. And then I can't take it back, right? I can't copy paste and send you a copy of it. So I can't, no one can steal it from me. Like if I put my money in the bank and they lend a bunch of money to Russian oligarchs who don't pay them back, like what happened in Cyprus, that Cyprus bank just took the money because the Russian oligarchs said, we want more. And people were afraid and they did it. So that can't happen with Bitcoin. And so it is this incredible technology, arguably one of the 100 or so foundational technologies of the last century. Although I want to segue real quick, total non sequitur, but it's how the human brain works, which is why we'll never have AGI. Because
why
AGI
the show work?
It could not do what I'm about to do. So what I'm going to say is that I'm going to go to electricity. How does everybody listening to this call feel about your electricity bill doubling in the last 6 months for the reason that a couple multi-billionaires have 85, 90, 95% margins on a convenience, a first world convenience. Like I can type into my computer, explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old how collateralized lending works. It's actually not valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a valuable thing. Learning is a valuable thing, but that's a computer program.
Mm-hmm.
And while we might quibble whether that's a useful prompt, the vast majority of prompts are not.
Right.
The vast majority of questions asked to ChatGPT, like, cheat on my homework for me, or, write me a get out of school, free card, write me a doctor's note, or, whatever it is. Are you really comfortable paying double the amount for electricity because of that? I'm not. I mean, I'm really not. To me, electricity is one of the great inventions, maybe the greatest invention, because I think life kind of ceases without it. Like we can live with just about everything else, but if we can't keep our food and our medicine cold and, our devices running, we'd pass. But ultimately, there's a problem in all these things that say, right now, OpenAI uses the 9th most amount of electricity of any country in the world. It's just above Spain. Right? Just above Spain, just below Germany and France.
We profiled that last week in the chart of the week. It was staggering and projected to grow, right? So
projected to go to number 3,
mm-hmm.
right, by the end of the decade.
All right.
Projected to go to number 3. And the problem with that is why? Why is that okay? Like, maybe we need to find a way to do more with less, right? Maybe we need more efficient chips. Maybe we need, maybe there should be a time lag so we don't have to tax the system. Do you need that answer instantaneously? And I'm not saying you don't or you do, but I don't think electricity prices going up 100% every 6 months is sustainable.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think it's one of those things where like we don't think about the cost of any of our digital activations because they are intangible, right? So I'm on a computer, I click a button, and it's signals off a hurricane in the South Pacific, literally through all the fans that are happening in Texas. But yeah, the butterfly effect is real. And Mark, I guess maybe kind of bringing us back a touch towards some of the issues on policy. There was one thing that we have been talking about for quite some time on the idea of real world assets and how, we've called this for a long time that everything would be tokenized. That's the world that we're living in and living towards. And so now the SEC has jumped on board. Again, it's a very different SEC in this current administration than the past. There's a push to tokenize stocks, and that's setting up a clash between obviously fintechs and Wall Street. So there's reports of an advancing plan to allow, blockchain-based stock trading, and that could reshape the U.S. market, obviously, because imagine a world, Mark, where you can have, tokenized shares of Apple or Netflix through Coinbase or Gemini or Robinhood. And so now you have a 24/7 settlement time. And so, of course, that's not without its critics. Our favorite Ken Griffin has said, hey, I have Citadel, which, by the way, handles a third of U.S. retail trading. So there's a lot to lose there. Said, this actually is not a good thing because it could weaken compliance standards and promote more money laundering. But Mark, your thoughts on this?
Look, I mean, consider the source. And look, I'm a huge admirer of Ken Griffin. I'm on the record saying he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. But come on. I mean, consider the source. He has a lot to lose. And I love how the people who have the most to lose always default to money laundering and terrorism. Oh, fear. Bill Gates. Oh, it's only used by money launderers and terrorists. Jamie Dimon. Oh, it's only used by money launderers and terrorists. Warren Buffett. Oh, it's all, and here we are again. And so what do those people all have in common? Oh, they're already billionaires.
Bingo.
Huh. Wow. It's shocking. It's just shocking that a billionaire wants to stay a billionaire. I mean, it's shocking.
Sad but true. Yeah. So I think, this is one of those that speaks to the broader comment that if you are a Web3 native, you have distinct advantage in this new digital financial economy that we will inevitably shift to. Because the two innovations, Mark, are ones that, in my opinion, can but will not be done by the current incumbents. Change the trading hours and change the rails and lower your fees, right? That can be done. It's not impossible, but it will never get done.
Never. And look, you're exactly right? I mean, all of it can be done.
Right.
But there's no incentive. Look,
no way.
7 trillion with a T, 7 trillion, remember, $1 every second, 31,710 years. Speaking of that, I'll come back to it. So 7 trillion is the frictional cost of the global financial services market. And Ken Griffin and Warren Buffett and all these guys and Jamie Dimon, they take a cut of that, and that is their revenue. So lowering cost, in theory, that's what people are supposed to do. They're supposed to improve the lives of their customers, and governments are supposed to encourage that. No way, because those costs are the revenues of the elite. Mm-hmm. So that ain't gonna happen. And, being able to be closed for a period of time allows what? Here's an interesting stat. Over the last, it's 5 years, 4 years, I don't know the time frame. I can't remember the time frame, but 100%, not 97, not 96, not 84, 100% of the gains in the stock market came after hours.
Wow, that's incredible, right?
So think about that. So that means, all the time the market's open, zero gains. So what you had to do, which is what market makers do, you had to hold the position at the end of the day and then sell it at the open. So you capitalize on that gain. So, and we've seen it over and over and over again, right? The announcements are all made after hours. The position happens before because we can see it. It's not like on-chain transparent, but people have found ways to say, this person bought a bunch of options on Oracle stock right before the announcement.
What are the chances?
That's coincidental.
Right.
What a coinky dink. So, but 100% of the gains after hours. So if you trade at 24/7, that arbitrage is not possible. And look, I actually don't want a world where I have to stay awake 24/7 and trade. I don't want that world. But the cool thing is I won't have to because I'll have an agentic, operator. We talked to a company yesterday that's building a version of this where you can talk in real text, right? Just speak. The software then turns your request into an AI agent that then manages other systems on your computer and does that. And you could easily say, build me a portfolio that rebalances every, 4 or 5 hours on a global basis, including every asset class. Don't limit it to stocks and bonds and cash. Get me fine wine, get me collectible cars, get me fine art, get me cryptocurrency, get me, Parisian, baguettes or whatever you want. That's the real bread. But whatever you want to trade, and or the biggest market in the world coming up is going to be the market for compute.
Right.
So once all these data centers get built, which is at an unsustainable pace and unsustainable cost, but once they get built, the, compute power then can be traded, kind of like electricity markets are traded or other commodity markets are traded. So I can have an agent do that for me and will actually rebalance. Like, I'm not very good. It's the cobbler's kids who have no shoes. I'm not very good at going in my 401k and rebalancing every quarter like I should. And so it does fine, but it doesn't do as well as it could if I had someone taking care of it all the time. And that's coming. And that requires this fully integrated, seamless, not dominate, like we can't have Binance dominate crypto, and we can't have Ken dominate traditional, and we can't have Robinhood selling only to Ken. We need that information, the API calls to be ubiquitous to everybody. It's coming, but the incumbents are squarely in the then they fight you phase.
Absolutely.
2009 to 15, first they ignore you, 16 to 21, then they laugh at you, 22 to 27, 28, then they fight you, and then we win. And when we win, it will be glorious.
Yep. So let's put our money where our mouth is, Mark, and kind of for the chart of the week, show exactly what the trend looks like in this idea of a tokenized stock market. And already there has been incredible movement, and I'm never shy to kind of lean towards a cliche to explain what might be a complicated topic. And that is that sell the news, buy the rumors. That's exactly what's been happening over the last 100 days as there's a shift that's kind of on the rise. So I will, as usual, remind our listeners, check us out on YouTube. Thank you for those that have already been seeing the show there for Mark's SOT game reveal, as well as the chart of the week and other fun bits, if we've been deep faked or if we are just existing in the digital ether. So I will look to share here and let me know if this is visible. Chart it was put together by actually some information out of Binance and obviously RW to XYZ. They've done a ton of really, really great work. What this is showing is that this movement pattern in the last 100 days is signaling some real potential shifts in the market, right? So we've got 31 billion currently, which is, it's a big number. It's obviously dwarfed by what, is happening in the equities side right now. So this, though, Mark, and bear with me, this is a bit of a jump. If we're to sort of take this trend and say 1%, just 1% of global equities could be tokenized, you already go from that 31 billion to 1.3 trillion. So if we're looking at this rise in this trend over the last 100 days and what, the tea leaves seem to be suggesting here in the US, I think this is something, Mark, that we can no longer ignore, and clearly why we've shifted from the laugh at you phase to the fight you phase. What say you?
I mean, the abruptness of the eruption, a lot of alliteration, in just, like I say, the last 100 days is pretty extraordinary. And look, we've been talking, not just we, but a lot of people have been talking about RWAs, tokenized RWAs, real world assets for a long time. And, companies like Securitize and others have been working hard for, better part of 7 years to try to convince people to take these, valuable assets, be it stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities, businesses, real estate, titles, whatever it is, and turn them into tokens. And again, a token doesn't mean a little, coin circulating somewhere. It's an entry on a ledger on a blockchain, which establishes truth. So no more trust, no more brokerage firms rehypothecating your assets, no more lenders rehypothecating your assets. You own your assets and you can control how they're used through software. And this is a profound kind of beginning. And it is just that. And even 31 billion is no number to sneeze at, but it's really insignificant.
It's a rounding error.
It's a rounding error. It's not insignificantly different from zero in the big picture. And that's the good news, right? The good news is, as great as this looks to go from, standing start to 31 billion in a quarter, it's just scratching the surface of what is possible and what is realistic. And look, every better technology in history that's come along eventually wins, right? I mean, we've talked about this before. I don't take a covered wagon to, go down to Arkansas last week. I don't take a car. I took an airplane, and that was a, rather nice way to get there. And I'm able to enjoy the weekend and get home and get ready for, my son to go to school and me to go to work, and everything's great. And, and I do love the little factoid that I contributed in part, as many people did last weekend, to the 3% of American GDP that is athletics. It's an amazing number. 3% of all the GDP in America is college and professional athlete, and I guess recreational athletics too, because people spend a lot of money for Pee Wee soccer now and travel hockey. But the point there is that there's a lot of assets in the world, and all of them will eventually be on blockchains. And blockchains will be the base layer of data organization. As we talk about the ABCDs, data. Everything is data. Data is the most important thing. Data, now it was just announced today, Google's going to use, even though they said they don't keep it and they said they weren't going to use it, now they admitted, well, yeah, we keep it and we're going to use it. When you talk to their chatbot, they're going to use those conversations to target ads to you.
We
told me you weren't
coming, Mark.
And you told me you weren't going to use it against me. And so now I'm not going to use your product. So, I'm going to go use DeepSeek, and they'll probably use it too, but at least they're not going to send me ads.
The backlash, Mark, against big tech is real. And I think that's why you see some of these rises, and also why you're seeing companies even do things like listing in part on blockchains like Solana. So I can have a conventional IPO through the banks, or I can kind of seek an alternative route. But the backlash towards an establishment that's what kind of created Bitcoin in the first place, right? Out of the dawn of the financial crisis. And what you're seeing
No,
are these,
amen. And look,
companies that.
also yesterday, OpenAI announced maybe it was 2 days ago, their new platform with Stripe, where you can do one-click commerce. Now, why anyone would do this, I have no idea. Like, because they showed an example. It said, I want a ceramic coffee mug, and it popped up one response, one thing, click to buy, $39.99 or whatever. I'm like, first of all, how do I know that wasn't paid to serve to me? Okay. Secondly, there's no context at all in that. You didn't show me the range. Can I get one for $4 and one for $40? Why are you serving me $39.99?
Correct.
And it just seems so ridiculous. But will people really be that, I don't know, convenience focused that, well, if it's telling me that's the one I should buy, that's the one I should buy. I'm like, are you joking? I mean,
well, yeah, that's the piece about, trust and brand management, Mark. That's the oldest page in the business school textbook is the Walmart business model, right? Walmart always gave two toasters, like the cheap toaster and the expensive, actually 3 toasters. Forgive me, the cheap, the expensive, and kind of the middle of the road, right? So, name your price, $10, $30, and $50. So people said, the $10 is going to break down, $50 too much, so I'll choose 30. What you didn't see was the $20 toaster that did everything of the $30 and everything of the $50. But people went to Walmart and they thought, this could just be good. And actually, we saw Costco copy this with Kirkland. That's what Kirkland is sort of that $20 option. And then they get to keep the margin. But I think that's why when we say replacing truth over just trust is so integral, because you can actually now see these things in real time. You can see what you're getting charged. But if you have a platform where it's completely obfuscated in a time where trust is at an all-time low for big tech, it's tricky. But I will point out, Mark, the budding contradiction here that smart contracts or ChatGPT queries in their vast majority are still compiled and consolidated on AWS, which is controlled.
Oh, no. Don't even get me started on that.
That's a huge one we got to watch out for.
Yeah, do not get me started on the single points of failure in the current system. And decentralized is better than centralized in every possible way. Mm-hmm. And centralized gives us convenience and it gives us comfort in the brand, yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, it's so controlled and it's fraught with peril. Like Bank of America, yes, it has a brand and people feel comfortable, but that business model where they literally can seize your asset anytime just because they want to, because it's no longer your asset, it's theirs, is inferior to be your own bank with Bitcoin. Now, there are drawbacks to Bitcoin and holding your own keys and all that good stuff, but there are workarounds there. But I've had the aha moment now multiple times to that point of like, if I own, an expensive relatively or valuable, let's use valuable, a valuable digital asset, whatever that is, whether it's the title to my car or whether it's my digital ID, which I never want a CBDC digital ID. I just want the digital representation of my ID, but not a permissioned one that I am afraid of that's coming. But anything that I think has value, I don't want it on a blockchain that points to an AWS server.
Agreed.
Where AWS could say, you know what? Nope, you can't have the data because it's not your data. It's our data. I don't want that. I want it on chain, truly on chain. I want proof of work. I don't want proof of stake. I don't want proof of history. I don't want proof. I guess I'm crazy like that. So decentralization is better. Centralized is going to fight it. the hyperscalers are going to fight it. The idea that they want to call, OpenAI a hyperscaler, I don't really understand. I mean, now he says he's going to build a social network. Why? We have plenty of social networks.
Right. Well, we'll see, Mark, because obviously this was the announcement of Cerebras raising $1.1 billion at an $8.1 billion valuation, delaying their IPO. I think this surprised some people because this is a moment where exits are happening. AI is super hot. But again, maybe this is just a alignment of incentives between investor and CEO. But to the point is, the next great tech companies are all private now. And I think that is exactly what we're speaking to. So, we'll probably end on that note.
Innovation has always happened in the private markets.
Right.
It's not that public companies can't innovate. They just, for the best, don't. Now, they're fast copiers, right? I mean, Instagram was just a total ripoff of Snap, right? Or I don't remember. I don't use any of that stuff, but
yeah, the reverse. But yes, the concept is the same, right? Snap, plagiarized off of that, and in some ways, you've got this idea of the first mover fallacy, where if you're the first mover, you're supposed to win. But no, it should be the last mover. But I think what we're experiencing here is going to be a paradigm shift. But our bones, our root of our tech system is incredibly ridden with tech debt, just like our financial system. So there's going to be an incredible fight that we're going to have to monitor, in this time. But
it's the perfect analogy, that tech debt that, and whether it's COBOL and Fortran in the financial system, or whether it's, Java and C++ in the tech world, yeah, you're right. It's tech debt, and you can't overcome it, and you can't innovate your way out. Now you can acquire your way out, which a lot of them have done. And we'll see some of that, but the strong will say, no, I don't want you to buy me for, a little, because I'm going to build something that's worth a lot. And, that's what we get to do every day, which is, the big fun.
No doubt about it. Well, we will wrap there, Mark, and thank our listeners as always for tuning in. And as always, we'll remind them to rate, review, subscribe, and to stay current.
Thank you for joining us this week on Digital Currents. Check out our links to our website and social media in the show's description box. Please make sure to subscribe if you like what you hear. And remember, stay current.
This podcast should not be construed as investment advice nor solicitation for the sale of any security, advisory, or other service. Investment themes and ideas discussed may be owned by funds managed by the host and podcast guests. Any conflicts at the time of production have been mentioned by the host but are subject to change. Listeners should consult their personal financial advisors before making any investment decisions.